Welcome to the cSRX Docker Compose Learning Byte. I'm Gordon with the Education Services Department at Juniper Networks. Let's get started. After watching this learning byte, you will be able to use Docker Compose to launch a cSRX instance. The cSRX is a containerized version of our SRX series services gateways. Simply put, it is all of the advanced security features that are provided traditionally by our SRX series platforms in a containerized format. The primary use case is to secure containerized resources. One example I think of is I have an application, there's a web front end, maybe it's a containerized web front end. No traffic, of course, from the internet is going to come in. I need to secure that front end. And then every web front end talks to probably some containerized database resources in the back end. And I want to verify that these resources haven't been compromised. I need to secure those resources. And I need to spin up security in the same velocity and scale that I can spin up my web and my database containers. And so that's a use case for this as part of a service chain. So all traffic, anytime I spin up these resources, I also spin up security on demand in seconds. Now, to use Docker Compose to launch a cSRX instance, it looks like a lot. I'm sorry about this slide. I'm going to go really quick. You have to do some of these things. Install Docker, right? Now, I have a Windows laptop. I installed Docker Desktop for Windows. There's a version for Mac. And then verify you have Docker Compose installed as well. When I install Docker Desktop for Windows, Docker Compose is automatically installed as part of that process. But from what I understand, on Linux versions of Docker, Docker Compose is a separate installation. So you do need the Docker Compose software installed. Then you need to download the cSRX container. This is from the Juniper Network support downloads site. Download the cSRX image. And then once you have it downloaded, you need to load it into a Docker image repository. I'll show you how to do that here in a couple of seconds. Then the magic is here. To use Docker Compose, when you run the Docker Compose command, it looks for a file called dockercompose.yml. It's a YAML formatted file. And this file simply contains all of the instructions used by Docker Compose to instantiate or launch your container along with the required networks, any volumes. And so this file is key to this process. I'll show you that file. Once that file is built, the Docker Compose commands are very trivial. We run Docker Compose up to launch our cSRX container. The -D option allows it to run detached, which means after this command completes, I get my prompt back, okay? And then as part of this launch process, there are a couple of volumes that are created and attached to the cSRX container. When I want to destroy that container, I run the Docker Compose down. This is an optional component to not only destroy the container, but also destroy any volumes that were created as part of this launch process. And then once it's launched, it's like any other SRX instance. You need to install a software license to enable whatever features you require, and also to apply some type of configuration. Now here's what we're going to build. We're going to launch a cSRX instance. There are, as part of the Docker Compose process, 3 networks will be created. We'll create an untrust network, a trust network. You can call the networks whatever you like. There will be 3 interfaces, 3 ports created for the cSRX instance. There will be a management port that will be assigned to the management network that will be created. These are the subnets that are associated with the Docker networks that will be created. And there will be 3 ports. The GIGI 000 interface would be assigned to the untrust network. It will receive 10.0.0.2 IP address. .1 is reserved by Docker on each subnet for the default gateway address. But this is what we will build with Docker Compose. And again, all of the instructions to do this are going to be in the Docker Compose.yaml file. This is, I'm on a Windows machine, so I open up a command prompt, and the command is very straightforward. Just Docker Compose up. Remember the -D option runs it in detached mode. It just builds my Docker networks. It creates the 2 volumes that are required by the cSRX instance and then launches the container. The container launches generally in a couple of seconds. And then when you're done, you want to destroy those resources. We simply run Docker Compose down. I forgot to highlight that one. But we run Docker Compose down, and the -V not only destroys the container, but it also deletes the volumes, right? So let me show you These are the normal instructions. I have another learning byte on this topic where we manually run these Docker commands. We want to create the management network, the untrust network, the trust with the IP masquerade options to enable the cSRX instance to perform NAT. There's volumes we create. There's a run command to launch the container. What's the host name? Does it run detached? What volumes get attached? All of these values have to be specified every time you perform these operations manually. Then let's attach the networks to the running instance. And again, that's fairly quick, right? And I've saved the command so I can copy and paste those in. But as I was mentioning earlier, the magic is in creating those same options, defining those same options inside of a Docker compose.yaml file. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of the file first, and I want to show you the networks that I create. I create a management network, right? It can be called whatever you'd like. I called it management net. And here's the subnet that is associated with that network. I made a trust network, an untrust network. And again, normally I would use, if I was doing this process manually, I'd do Docker network create, management net, Docker network, with all these options, right? And then I also created 2 volumes. I need a volume for the cSRX instance to store its configuration, and also a volume for it to store its logging information. And so you can call them whatever you'd like, but I define them here in the file as opposed to a Docker volume command, right? I'm not going to run this manually. And then I'm going to scroll back up to the top, and here's the services that I want to create. I want to create a cSRX instance, and here's the image, the cSRX that I downloaded from the Juniper Networks download site, and then imported loaded into my local image repository. I'll show you how to do that. Here's the name of the container, the host name. Here's the networks that I want to attach. So when the Docker network connect command, right? It's all listed here, connected to the management network. Here's the IP address I want to assign to that interface. Here's the trust, attach it to the untrust. So all of the things attaching the volumes, I'm going to have 3 ports. These are all things that I would specify when I used a Docker run. What networks to attach to, what volumes to attach, what's the root password going to be. If I can define all that in a YAML formatted file and save that as Docker Compose, I can simply go to the directory that contains this file and run a Docker Compose up and down and allow Docker Compose to handle the launching and the destroying of all of these resources. Here's my command prompt, and I'm going to show you the actual cSRX image. This is what I downloaded from our support site. It's about 250 megs in size. So once I've downloaded that, I need to load that image into my local Docker image repository, and I do that with a docker load -i and then the name of this file, right? Now doing that, it takes about a minute. It uncompresses it, and then it loads it into the local Docker registry. So I've already done that part, but download it, run this command, and then I can show you. I can do a Docker image ls command, and once I've run the Docker load, here it is. This was the most recent version of cSRX at the time I created this learning byte. So I need that, right? So those steps are done. I have Docker installed, and so I'm good to go. Let me show you kind of a before picture. I don't have any containers running. I don't have any volumes. And I only have the built-in Docker networks. I don't have the management net or the trust, untrust network. So there's where I stand. And so I'm in my working directory. This is where the Docker compose.yaml file is. So at this point, I'm just going to run a Docker compose up, and the -d option, remember, allows the container to spin up and run detached, which means I get my prompt back. And so I hit enter. In all of the processes that I traditionally had to enter manually, create these networks, create these volumes, attach, launch the container, there in a couple of seconds, it's all done for me. So now when I run the Docker container ls, right, there's my cSRX instance, right? It's up, it's running. I can see the networks that were created, the management net, the trust network, the untrust network. I can do a Docker network inspect ngmt_net, and I can even see the attached container. In that output, here's the containers. The cSRX 01 container is attached. Here's the IP address that was assigned to the interface the container is using to attach itself to that network. There's the MAC address. I can see the volumes that were created and attached. And so now my container's up, running volumes. I can connect to it using the Docker Exec command. I want to start an interactive terminal to the cSRX 01 container, and I want to access the Junos CLI. The root password was already set for me. So now that I'm in the device, I can run a show interfaces command. I can see the GIGI 000, the GIGI 001, right? I need to now install a license. I need to apply some configuration, right? There is no configuration on this container by default, all right? So let me exit out of that device. And now I can simply run a Docker compose down command. And I also want to delete not only the container, destroy the container and the networks, I also want to delete the volumes. That's an option. You don't have to run that because you can spin up another instance and use the same data, right? But in this case, I want to destroy the networks, the volumes, stop the container. It seems to take around 12 seconds or so to stop the container. They launch quick and they shut down. It takes a few more seconds to shut them down. And now I can run the same commands. The container's gone. We asked with the -B switch to also delete the volumes. And the trust and the untrust and the management network's gone. So once you get that Docker Compose YAML file built and you play with it a little bit, this is how quick and easy we can spin up and spin down container resources. In this learning byte, we use Docker Compose to launch and destroy a cSRX instance. Thank you very much.
Visit the Juniper Education Services website to learn more about courses. View our full range of classroom, online, and e-learning courses. Learning paths, industry segment and technology-specific training paths. Juniper Networks Certification Program, the ultimate demonstration of your competence. And the training community, from forums to social media. Join the discussion.